Down a little bit from the previous quarter, certainly, but do these numbers flatter to deceive?
Well, I mean, the credits, I mean, this is an issue that is going to be not just in the US, but also in China. You know, car companies that have lots of EVs, sell lots of EVs, they have lots of excess credits. And so that's a big positive for them. You know, for me, I mean, I look at the battery sector more broadly, and I think all the results from Tesla are very, very supportive for battery demand. I mean, Tesla's reaffirming the 500,000 sales goal for this year, which is has been a very, very ambitious goal, and I think that had been questioned. And I think batteries are really key to this. You know, batteries really are enabling this electric revolution we're seeing from not just Tesla, but also, you know, Tesla's putting down the gauntlet for all the competitors now to try to keep up, and that's forcing Volkswagen and all these competitors to also roll out EVs, which means much more batteries. So it's great for, obviously, Tesla's numbers seem to be good, but I don't cover that stock. It's also great for the battery stocks as well.
Well, you do cover battery stocks. I'm going to ask you, do you think it's doable that they can increase production in the fourth quarter by 30% and produce 181,000 cars there to meet that 500,000 target in terms of output? That's one part of it. But which are the battery makers which benefit from this, Mark?
Yeah, so the key battery suppliers to Tesla are Panasonic in the US. Then in China, they've got LG Chem and CATL. Those are the key suppliers. So those are the beneficiaries. But what's happening is the share shift is moving towards LG Chem and CATL and away from Panasonic. So those two are the big beneficiaries here. I mean, I think in terms of the capacity, I think Tesla's announced that they have plenty of capacity for the cars. There's obviously execution with actually producing that. And in the past, they've talked about batteries being the supply constraint. Right? I think Elon Musk has said that in the previous ramp of the Model 3. And I would expect we may well see that happen again. We've also heard that for other car makers in other regions that the batteries have been the bottleneck, and it's not really talked about enough. But the battery is often very much the bottleneck to ramping up the production here of EVs.
But absolutely, Mark, bottleneck maybe in production, but also in terms of life there as well, and storage capacity and things like that, because battery technology progress has been notoriously slow, hasn't it? Do you foresee any breakthrough coming in the future?
So it's really interesting in the battery space because there's been a lot of quite interesting news. I mean, you mentioned about China Ministry of Information and Technology just there about their announcements. There's a lot of startups and a lot of announcements just recently from QuantumScape that's listing via a SPAC later this year. That solid state battery technology, that really is the promise for the long-term future. There's also several other companies working on solid state batteries. LG Chem just yesterday on their earnings call outlined their strategy for solid state batteries and lithium sulfur batteries. These are really the next generation batteries that are looking to be commercialized starting about 2025. So it's not something that's going to be hitting or coming into your EV anytime the next year or two, but the companies are working on them. Several companies are working on them quite fiercely right now. And I 5 years, you're going to start to see some pretty big improvements in battery technology. And that's going to be enabled by a lot of these startups and the big companies as well. LG Chem, Samsung, CATL, they're also working on these new technologies as well.
Right, and presumably, Mark, there are price and cost implications to batteries as a result of some of that innovation. But you're looking out to 2025. If we bring it forward a little bit, what is your estimation of where prices for electric vehicle batteries go, say, in the next 12 to 24 months? You're looking at, what, $70 per kilowatt hour at the moment. Realistically, how much further can they go down? Because, of course, they are a key component, cost component for the overall vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the cost to the car OEM for the entire pack, it's averaging around $140 per kilowatt hour today. There are some cheaper than that, like LFP batteries in China, but on average, it's about 140, and the cost of declining, or prices rather, which is important for the OEMs, are declining a little bit more than 10% a year. So we think we're going to get to about $100 per kilowatt hour by about 2023 to 2024. And that will be about the break-even cost parity with combustion engine powertrain. That $100 per kilowatt hour mark is the kind of typically the magic number that we're looking for, where EVs are about as cheap, same price, same cost to build as a combustion engine. I think that's going to lead to a much, much more significant boom in demand for EVs.
You've talked about the capacity challenges. You've talked about some of the leading battery makers here in China, LG Chem or CATL. And of course, you also have in the region Panasonic as well. To what extent do you expect Tesla to continue those partnerships, or how do those relationships develop and mature now that Tesla is also looking to bring some of its own battery production in-house?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked a little bit about this after the Tesla Battery Day. I mean, Tesla does have ambitions to build some capacity itself, but the sheer amount of capacity they need, they're talking about 3,000 gigawatt hours by 2030, right? And their pilot plant that they're building currently is 10 gigawatt hours. So the other 2,990 is mostly, almost all, we believe, going to be from the key battery suppliers. They need their battery suppliers to execute on this plan. To go completely solo and break off the relationships with these big battery makers would be extremely detrimental to Tesla, we think. And we think they need the battery makers. So we think they're all going to be beneficiaries. Sure, Tesla may do a little bit by themselves, and they may take a little bit more ownership of the technology stack of the batteries. Is that what they're trying to do? But we still think that very much for large volumes, they're going to rely on the companies that do this best, which are the CATLs, LG Chems, Samsung SDIs of the world.
Terrific, Mark. Last time we talked, we were looking forward to Battery Day, Tesla's Battery Day. Was that a bit of a damp squib? It was really, really touted as being one of the biggest days in history with regards to batteries.
Well, I mean, after the Tesla Battery Day, a lot of the stocks were a bit weak because I think some people were a bit disappointed. To me, I thought that the announcements that Tesla made were pretty impressive, but most of them are innovations that other battery companies are already working on. So there's one or two things that Tesla's doing that are a bit special, that are a bit Tesla specific, such as, not to get too technical, but the dry electrode is something that is more specific to Tesla. But the other things Teslas are doing in battery tech, LG Chem, Samsung SDI, CATL are also doing. So from that perspective, it was slightly disappointing. And also, I think some people were disappointed that there was no actual battery sample to show off. Like they were talking about these long-term developments. Many battery companies talk about long-term developments, but until you have an actual battery that you can show that's actually working and do a demonstration, people in the battery world just don't believe it. Because results from the lab is one thing, actually does it work reliably is another. So that's why maybe slightly disappointing, but I think there's a lot of positive developments coming for the long term.